You are listening and watching the Two Chumps Football Podcast. That is Emil Calomino. I'm Chad Wilson. And I'm saying that is like, I'm sorry for you guys that are just listening to this thing. Trust me, Emil Calomino is here. And so am I, because you're hearing my voice. Anyway, we're going to get to some things today. I'm going to ask some very important questions to my co-host here surrounding the game of football, whether that's college or NFL. So, we're going to tackle some of the local and current issues that we have going on in the game of football. Emil, I don't want to start this thing off on another rant about quarterback salaries because, that, quite frankly, is going to get old for the audience. But I am just sitting here thinking about this. They're going to have to do something about what's going on here.
You can tell this guy teaches the wrong back. He teaches corner backs because
they're going to have to do something here. I'm just thinking about these guys that got to get paid. So last time we were on our last show, I believe you asked me a question about Dak, like what would I do?
Yeah, what would you pay him, or how would you handle the contract?
Right, you did ask me that question, and this is not one of the major things that I wanted to ask you, but what would you do if you were the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love? Would you try to get a contract done now, or are you going to try and go through this season and then try to do it after you see whatever Jordan Love? I have my thoughts on this. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Because
that's a big gamble, right? Because you could be in the Daniel Jones camp if you're wrong. Because what you're really saying is, do I want to lock him up probably in that $40 to $45 million range, or take the chance that he is that and I'm paying him $55 million, right? But my view is, to use a finance term, the delta is about $10 to $15 million, which in salary cap terms isn't that much. Being wrong on a $45 million contract is a lot. And until we find out, I like to see a guy do it again. I mean, there's a lot of one-offs in the history of the NFL. Like Scott Mitchell. You remember the great Scott Mitchell, the lefty, who came in. I have got to
see. I certainly remember Scott Mitchell being here. I don't remember Scott Mitchell giving off vibes like he should be a highly paid quarterback.
Well, the Lions thought so after he left Miami, and they paid him well for the money at the time. And Scott Mitchell was not that.
I'm of the mindset that I would, having watched this guy and watching the amount of improvement from the beginning of this season to the middle to the end, and just watching him in those playoffs, I would take the gamble of trying to get the deal done now and trying to get the guy at, as you say, 45 million, somewhere less than 50 million. I would take the gamble on doing that. Barring injury, because there's nothing you can do about it. All right. We saw what happened, with the Giants, and okay. So you can't do nothing about that. I'm of the mindset that if this guy's healthy all season, he's going to do it again, and he might even do more. And you're gonna pay a premium for this guy. On top of that, you got a nice young nucleus of wide receivers there that you're going to have to pay. You're not able to pay all of them, but you're going to be in a situation that the Cincinnati Bengals are in right now, where they've got to part ways with, a major weapon. And if I'm the Packers, I don't want to be in that situation. I want to get this thing done now. I'm going to, based on what I saw, roll the dice there. Because,
I understand your thinking. I think the bigger issue would be why, if you're Jordan Love and you believe in yourself, I might be more concerned if he took me up on it. Because if you believe in yourself, you have no reason. I mean, if you say, hey, I'm going to do this again, I don't really care.
Yeah. I guess that would depend on the number they throw his way.
Sure. I mean, if they're coming in at like 50 million, 51 million, he may say, hey, I like Green Bay. I want to be in Green Bay. It's a solid organization. I'll do it again, but that's okay. I want guys around me. So fine. But if they try to go low and say, hey, we want to pay you slightly more than what Daniel Jones's deal was like 4 years and 160 million. And I know that sounds absurd because if someone came to me right now and offered me 160 million,
it wasn't absurd at the time. It wasn't,
No,
but,
I mean, it sounds absurd to talk about 4 years and $160 million being a low ball. But in terms of that position, it is, right?
Yeah, there's some other deals that got to get done out there that you probably don't want to wait around for. So, there is that part of it. Jordan Love might say, yeah, I don't want to do it now. I'm going to run through the year.
Don't you think agents drives a lot of player sentiment? Because maybe I'm wrong about this, but like I've got to think and maybe just my worldview is different, but whether I'm getting 170 million or 220 million, for me at that point, when my brain starts saying, well, I lose this much in taxes, this and this at the end of the day, and I could make X if I'm really good in the right situation, say New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, versus pick a city. I'm going to be happy in being on a winning team at a certain point, because I've got enough money. I have to believe the agents drive a lot of this because they want the most money. They're getting a fee off that.
They are getting a fee, and they also base their reputation on it. So, the same way a quarterback is going to have his reputation based on the number of yards and touchdowns that he throws for, the agent's number that he's measured by is the size of the contract. So I know of several situations where a player was ready to take a contract with a team that was in his best interest, and he was strongly encouraged from doing so by the agents because the contract was not in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of these situations where I've heard about this, the agents won out. Ultimately, in the long run, the player lost out. Not in terms of money, but their career took a serious swan dive because they went to a place they didn't belong, and things didn't go the way that they should. I want to apologize to Scott Mitchell. I'm looking at the numbers. It was Scott Mitchell in 1995 threw 4,338 yards. And folks, before you get like all poo-pooing on those numbers, in 1995, that's a big number.
Big number.
Threw 32 touchdowns and 12 interceptions.
Yes.
I mean, I would say
those are big numbers. Remember,
I don't know what they signed him to, though. Okay, I don't remember where his contract came up because, with the Dolphins, he never showed his best year with the Dolphins was 1,773 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So they didn't certainly bring that guy on for a lot of money from Miami. They must have backed the brakes.
No, he got a pretty good deal. He was backing up Marino, and he played at a time Marino was hurt for a series of games. Right. He played well. Don't forget, and we're old enough to remember, 12 interceptions back then was not a lot. The game was different. It was pushing. They pushed the ball more down the field. You had different type of routes.
Today, you'd worry when a guy got to 20.
Yeah.
These guys are single digits now, and they're a lot more safer passes. Passing the football was very much a beyond the line of scrimmage thing back in this day.
Today, many teams, look at some of the different plays and concepts even the Chiefs use, that almost a pass becomes a running play. It's almost a long handoff.
Those jet sweeps are passes, so
right.
I don't know. Did they get their money's worth then? He ended up throwing for 29-17 and 34-84. It's not his fault they're the Lions and they don't go to the Super Bowl or anything.
Yeah, Barry Sanders, right, at the time?
You did. I mean, Matthew Stafford had Calvin Johnson. You can't overcome the fact that you're Detroit. All right?
Wait. We're doing an off-season show. We're already hammering on a team that was in the NFC Championship game. My God.
They Detroited the second half of that game and just, hey, we're Detroit. What are we doing? Anyway, staying on that, though, I may have asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again and see if your answers are the same kind of stuff your wife will do, after a long hideout.
Is this like that newlywed game, only we're doing it with football?
Which rookie quarterback do you think is going to have the most success? And doesn't have to be a first-round guy. Anyone that you've seen picked. Is it Spencer Rattler coming out of nowhere for the New Orleans Saints? Of all those guys picked.
I don't know why. I'm really, really, really stuck on Daniels. I want to be wrong on that because he's in the NFC East, right? Mm-hmm. and I'm a fan first and foremost. But I kind of like the situation he's going into more than everybody else. But I mean, I'm reading articles, the underwear Olympics this time of year, the OTAs, and they're raving about my guy Caleb Williams. But
Are they? Because I saw a little rumor that he got benched one practice because he threw 7 interceptions.
It's hard. I'm on Bleacher Report. He's dropping dimes. Who knows? Nobody's hitting anybody. So I mean, I don't.
Please,
I just think
for all the fans out there, please expect for these guys to be completely stroked all the way up until the first game in September. That's
if
just
your coach comes out at the end of OTAs and says things suck, you're having a good for a long year.
Yes, go ahead and burn your fanware right then and there. But
I like Daniels. I like what he's come into there. I like the fact that Quinn will likely at least build a competitive defense that doesn't force him into shootouts where they can kind of manage him. If things go according to plan. He's got McLaren, kid from Ohio State.
Yeah, McLaren.
Yeah, he's got a receiver or two.
Yes.
So they have some weapons there. I just like the situation for him.
Are you like some of the others worried about his size since he's a guy that will take off with the football, a little slight frame?
I'm not a big, how I feel about that. I think you run to throw the ball, and if he keeps running to run, well, then he might end up on a stretcher. This whole conversation can be a moot point. I
think the running around really only works if you're Josh Allen or you are as quick as a Lamar Jackson and can avoid.
You gotta be either exceptionally big, like you said, Josh Allen, or exceptionally fast, Lamar Jackson. And if you're kind of in between 6'4", like Daniels, tall and lean, that's a formula for an injury. So I would tell him you have a good arm and the ball goes faster than you can run.
All right, so we're sticking with Daniels because I do believe that was your answer. I gave that, right after the draft. I think, but we had left it to the first round guys, and I think of those first round guys, probably the guy immediately walking into the best situation. So I'm with you there. College football, we've talked about it a lot. Most of our conversations in college football have centered around the transfer portal and NIL, of course. There are two types of coaches in college football right now. The majority of them are guys that are going to use the transfer portal. You do have those who are totally up in the portal, like completely massaging it, using it. Like
Lane Kiffin comes to mind.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin, Deion Sanders. Yeah. The University of Miami, Florida State. And then you have those like Adabo Swinney that is, by and large completely against it, still full boat in on high school football recruiting and things of that nature. He says those guys they're transfer portal guys anyway because they're brand new coming in here. Emil, if you were a college football coach right now in 2024, and I do need to present it to you this way. Let's say you are a coach in a top 10 program. All right. I'm not going to ask you this question if you're at Northwestern.
No, I know what you mean.
If you're a top 10 football program,
you're at a blue blood program.
You're at a blue blood top 10 program with expectations. Would you be a guy that uses the transfer portal? And if so, how much?
Well, the first part's easy. Football, all sports are about talent acquisition. So I'm using the portal. If that's a rule and I can use it, I'm using it. But I'm only going to use it the way I like to use free agency, and that's to fill little holes here and there. I'm not going to use it as I get some, like when Deion came in last year or the first year Riley was there at USC, came in and inherited a 4-8 team. You've got to completely turn that roster over quickly, and if it's there, you're going to use it. But I don't think it's a fix where you should be building your roster through it. I think it should be hey, we need some depth on the offensive line. Oh, let's grab a couple linemen. Or, you know what I'm trying to say? Same way in NFL free agency. You don't build your roster through free agency. You build it through the draft and you augment at certain key spots where you can get a guy at the right price who fits your system. That's the way I would use it.
Well, when you see a school like Florida State really thrive and prosper in rather short order by using the transfer portal, they brought in a lot of guys through the transfer portal, and they really should have been a team in the college football playoff, but for the unfortunate incident.
But they hit. You know what I'm saying? They hit on the quarterback and everything kind of went along. But I don't know if it's a long term, like if you're going to bring in 15, 20 guys every year. I don't know if that's the way I build a
Do you
roster.
have a number in mind, percentage-wise, of your roster? Would it be, 60,
If you're
40,
using
70, 30?
if you're using 85 players, I'd try to, if it personally, depending now on my own attrition. Remember, that's the other part of this.
Hmm.
If I lose 15 guys, well, I gotta have depth. But if I could control that, I'd try to keep it at 10 a year max.
Oh, okay. So you have an actual number. I was thinking,
No,
would you
I'm
go
thinking
80,
like 10.
20?
Like, to me, that doesn't sound crazy. When you get above 10, it kind of sounds, wow, you brought in like 17 guys. But again, if I lost 17 guys, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's tough. And I'm just wondering about college football as we move forward. Is it that kind of thing? We saw a whole lot with criticism for John Calipari, who wants to leave things the way that they were. He's very old school in the way he wants to construct his roster as a college basketball coach, and he's finding himself losing out because of the way he's going about the roster. He's doing the one and done guys, and then you're getting into the tournament, you're getting beat by more mature teams.
I think these people who limit themselves, we all have an idea of, I always use this in business, right? You have the world the way you wish it was. You can use this in any aspect of life, not just business. And then you have to deal with the world the way it is, right? So if I was the purveyor of college football, or in control of it, there'd be a lot of things that wouldn't happen as they are today. But if I'm coaching in the game, like Nick Saban was doing at the end, saying, listen, I don't think this is a really good idea.
Right.
But if you want to do that, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah. And that really was it. I had to explain that to several people online.
Yeah.
That with each, development, each new thing that was introduced that they made okay, he would ask you, are you guys sure? Is this something that you really, really want to do? And when they said yes, he said, okay.
Yeah, okay. He didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm going to beat you guys over the head with this very bat right here. Emil, did you happen to see at all that it looks like we are going to have the ability for colleges to pay their athletes?
Oh, listen,
where do you stand on this? How do you feel about it?
At some point, I think you need I told you this last show we did. I never thought I'd say this because me encouraging the Congress to make laws, but you've got to have a set of laws here. You can't have players be classified as employees. That's next. To me, they're student athletes, and if we're going to pay them, okay. But you start getting into employees, what are we doing here? It's
What are your fears there? What are you worried about?
Well, what I'm really worried about is there's only going to be at a certain point, maybe 40 schools that are going to do this. We're really, truly going to have as I sarcastically call it, we're truly going to have semi-pro football. Because there's an Ivy League school, and I said this back in 4 or 5 months ago, people don't get it. They play these sports truly as intercollegiate sports.
Mm.
They don't need to have a football team at Dartmouth. They'll be just fine.
No, they don't. I'm glad that they do, and they provide those opportunities for players.
Oh, I am too. I'm saying if it gets cost prohibitive to the point that these schools, because most fans out there are fans of Power 5 schools, unless they're alumni. So they're watching the sports through the eye of a Michigan or Ohio State or a Texas or a USC fan. The economics aren't going to work for some of these schools.
True. And I haven't dug deep enough into the legislation because this is all very new. But is it something that's mandated that these schools must do this? Or is it a choice?
What you're seeing is the issue with the payments, the settlement of these class action suits.
Right, which is what they're trying to run away from.
Pay and everything, but here's the issue. It's not settling all. From what I understand, there can be more suits coming. So at some point, it's almost like the tobacco industry settled, right? You've got to have a set of laws. Here's the final settlement. Here's how everybody gets back paid. Here's how we're moving forward. Or else this is really going to become a couple conferences. That's it.
Yeah, and I think the NCAA is worried about being crippled, being bankrupted by these suits, etc.
Yeah, obviously there's an economic issue, and then there's an issue of what are we really doing as the NCAA? I mean, do we really even have rules?
Yeah, what is their function at this
What's
point?
the function, right? We're paying the players. They can leave whenever they want. I mean, the NFL actually has less player movement than college football.
At this point in time, yes, I must agree with you. Truth, a little bit of truth, sir. A little bit of truth, sir. Do the players getting paid turn you off from college football right
now? When the game starts, no. So the purist in me says, I like the idea that it was amateurism. The realist in me says the best players were always getting paid. It was just a matter of how much, right? I mean, let's be honest. There was bags floating at every school.
We know about everything going on in Oklahoma back in the day. I don't
want to hear the Rudy guys out there telling me no one at Notre Dame got a bag. Okay,
right?
Somebody,
of course,
yes,
of course. Because like, how else do you get a kid to go to South Bend when he's from?
So I don't want to hear that, but I mean, at least, like I always say, it's kind of my analogy again. I like analogies. Online gambling. Remember, I said to you, I'm not against betting, but at least when we were younger, we had to call a guy with a little cheap cigar, no neck, a lot of hair, big shoulders.
And do what occurs, sir.
Tuesday or Wednesday, first of all, you better pay him.
Right.
You gotta sit on a phone, get the lines, call them back. There was effort. Now it's like, oh, okay, here's a phone. Push the buttons. You're in your underwear. Yeah. You're like Tony Soprano. You got cereal on your chest. You're eating. Yeah. So I kind of feel like that's where college football is at today. It's like at least before they made you stressed to cheat. Now it's just like, whatever. Send them some money.
All right. I got this question for you then. I'm going to make Emil Calomino a wealthy billionaire, right?
Okay.
You got money. You got money to burn. Okay. So you don't want to buy your second plane. And you don't need a bigger boat. I'm good on that. We're cool on all those things. If you're a wealthy billionaire and you are the professed lover of all things USC athletics, but most of all the football team, would you be a part of the NIL collective? So would you contribute to getting the top recruits around the country to USC via your payments in the NIL collective? Would you devote some of your...
You're going to laugh at when I tell you this, but I'm being truthful here. No.
You would not.
I would.
So you wouldn't be comfortable being in a position to do something about what you're seeing happening on your television on Saturday, and you'd be rooted in and saying, no, I'm not going to participate.
I'm a business guy, and I have no way of locking your commitment in. In other words, if I come to you to play cornerback for me for the New York Giants, we're going to sign a contract. You're going to do it for 4 years, and I'm going to pay you $50 million. So we know that for the next 4 years, you're going to do that for me, and I'm going to pay you as long as we do it. I have no way to do that right now. I mean, I can come and give you this. And
is there not a way to structure the payments in that fashion?
I don't know enough about what's allowed and not allowed in this.
If it was allowed, you would do that.
Oh, if I could lock the kid in, sure.
Yeah. Hey, listen, 4 years, $32 million. All right. And we are going to scale it up like this. First year is going to be 4. Next year is going to be 6. Next year is going to be 10, however you want to do it.
Well, you're a little heavy.
Year, like they do.
I'm not giving a college kid 4 years and $32 million, but
I'm just saying, 5 years from now, we might even laugh at that number. But you know what I mean. Scale it some kind of a way. You would do this.
I'd say, Johnny, you could be on the billboard for my automobile dealership here in town, and I'll give you $200,000 a year, but you're going to sign a contract that you're going to stay here for 3 years.
So, Emil, you could then understand how all this is going on in college football. You've got people out there with money to burn, literally money to burn. Like, what else would I spend this money on? And by golly, my team winning on Saturday night gives me a lot of joy. On top of that, I really like this Hunger Games feel where I could just sit up high, whether that's in my, mansion in the hills or in a press box that they certainly will have ready for me at the stadium. And I can feel like I'm in control. They're actually these billionaires playing Madden, basically.
Let me ask you this. What do you think would happen if Elon Musk liked football?
My God, it would really depend on what team he liked. If it ended up being the Memphis Tigers, well, by golly, they'd be in that championship every year.
or I'll tell you what, he'd die trying to get them there.
Absolutely. And everyone's pulling up to the facility in Teslas, and we're going to just wonder how that happened.
This reminds me of like when on a Saturday afternoon, I hate to pick on them, but there are rivals. You get Notre Dame fans. When they're not having a good year, they'll start telling you about their graduation rates. And I say, listen, I turn on a game on Saturday afternoon to be entertained. And I'm going to tell you something. Call me shallow, but I'm far more entertained when USC wins than when they lose. That's just kind of the way I roll.
I bet you. And that's just really what's going on in college football. I think we've just got a bunch. They've always been there, as you said. They've always been these people who've got a lot of money that are, interested in one way, shape, or form in a program success, whether they're betting on it or they are just fans of the program or alumni, whatever the case may be. And you don't even have to approach some of these guys. They're probably calling the school and inquiring them like, hey, listen, I'm seeing what Ohio State's doing every year. I love Michigan. Coach, how can I help?
Well, I mean, you have an interesting perspective because you spent time around big-time college football, both as a player and as a parent, right? And I know you don't kiss and tell, and I wouldn't ask you to, but you know what goes on. And I think these, when people have money, right, they want to get something that other people can't get, right? So at a certain point, I always say there's certain comforts in life. Generally speaking, most people, when you get upper middle class, you can stay in the same hotels generally as Elon Musk. It may pain you a little, not him, but you can. These people want access to something that your average fan can't get, and they want the adulation that comes with it. And if people don't realize the amount that's heaped on these boosters by the programs themselves, the amount of ass kissing the coaches have to do, the individual audiences that they get access to these coaches. And that's what turns, when you really get behind, peel the onion back and you hear what some of these coaches say when they retire or go to the NFL. That's one of the turnoffs about college football, because they don't get to do as much coaching as they do fundraising and ass kissing and talking to some guy named Bubba who owns 12 dealerships in whatever town, and he thinks he knows how they should play their defensive ends against Mississippi next week.
Yeah, I know that's a big part of it, and you got to do it. You can't kiss it all. You can't tell this guy, get out of my face. What do you know? You can't really be completely and totally honest. You do have to play that game for a number of reasons. And yes, these guys get access to the coach, which makes them feel big. They have access to the players. They're in the know, and some of these guys are nerds, right? They never had that opportunity, but they do get now to say this. They do get to go to dinner and say, hey, I'm part of the reason why you're, you know what I mean? They're all USD fans, for lack of a better term.
Whatever. Look at the NFL. Let's use the ownership of the NFL, right? For every Jerry Jones and the late Jerry Richardson that were players, either at high college level or even in the NFL, most of these guys are nerds, for lack of a better word, that made their money.
Yeah, not completely in a derogatory term, because in this day and age, nerds run the world. All right, they're in tech, whatever the case may be. That's just the term to say you didn't play ball.
Right. They weren't hardcore, Al Davis, Jerry Jones guys that were football guys. I mean, people, as much as I like to have fun with Jerry's a football guy. He might not make always decisions I like, but
sure.
There's not, most of those owners were not that. They made their money as captains of industry, whether it was tech or whatever. And now they're in a world that is cool, because every businessman and rock star wants to be an athlete, and every athlete wants to be a businessman and rock star. It's kind of the way the world works.
Yeah, everybody wants to be something that they currently are not. And it's funny how things work that way. Staying in college football, we know USC is your football team. So outside of USC, as we sit here on this day, what is it, May 29th, who's the football team you're most excited to see come 2024?
Here's what I'm interested. I say excited because I'm interested and excited to see if it was a one-off. It shouldn't be. I want to see what Texas does, coming in with huge expectations off of last season. And you got people making lists. Here's Sark. Here's a guy that was summarily kicked out of college football. Had an alcohol problem, rehabilitated his career to his credit with some help from Nick Saban. Now he's being on list as one of the top 5 coaches in the sport. And Texas, traditionally, up until last year, has always been a team that's been disappointing since Mac Brown left. So I'm really curious as to, does Texas repeat that performance? Because they got that early game with Michigan on the road. Michigan's going to have some turnover themselves with Harbaugh leaving. But I'm curious to see what Texas does.
And same for me. I can't answer University of Miami. For some reason, Emil, I am really excited / curious to see what USC does in 2024 as a member of the Big Ten.
And post Caleb Williams.
And post Caleb Williams, but we got a good taste of that in the bowl game, and I feel like they'll be all right. I'm just really anxious to see it. My answer was going to be any one of the teams that are making these big jumps. So it would have been Texas or Oklahoma heading to the SEC, or Oregon or USC heading to the Big Ten. I'm really interested in seeing what USC does, both post Caleb Williams and entering into the Big Ten. How are they fare?
I feel personally, as a fan, much more comforted about USC right now because of one thing. I said to you last year, I was very worried about Lincoln Riley. I think he's a really bright coach. People forget he just turned 40 years old. Seven years coaching. And I wanted to see how he handled last year. Did he shrug it off and go, bad year, I'll get him next year. I'll score 56 a game and we'll keep giving up 40. Or did he really say, I'm coaching one of the all-time great programs, and this defense I had was historically bad, like in 100 and some years, gave up the most ever. And it seems that he took it to heart. He brought in guys that can coach. He brought in a real defensive coordinator. I think Henderson, the defensive line coach from the Rams, huge win for them, both recruiting and just credibility with, players and techniques. And so we'll see how it translates. But at least as a fan, I see that this guy is at least taking what happened last year seriously. Now, I don't know if it'll improve. I think it will, but we'll see.
Yeah, and here's to hoping he allows those guys to coach. Though, he's not a meddler of defense. It's just how practice is run. Because, I've heard some things there about how
he's got to learn to coach to and I'm hoping these guys rub off on him. And you've got to learn to coach to the game. In other words, at some point you mature if you're going to be a great coach, like Andy Reid showed last year. And I don't have to have a pinball machine every year. If my defense needs help, I got to call that offensive game to help them.
Right.
The maturity.
Which was missing last year. I'm not going to lie.
It was missing.
A lot of times you could have shortened the game and you just went out there and said, our job is strictly to score points. Well, not always, crazy as that sounds. Sometimes you just need to shorten the game. If you happen to score in the process, fine. You should feel comfortable doing that. But lightning your way up and down the field when, A, your defense hasn't had a chance to rest, and B, hasn't had enough time to get some answers on the sideline, and you're throwing them back out there, well, you've pretty much bought yourself a shootout because the tone is set, and that's just what you're going to be in today. And then now it becomes a game of luck.
Yeah, you can do that kind of crap, for lack of a better word, back in the day when you were more able to stockpile players, which I'm not sure a lot of schools can do anymore with the portal. But back in the day, use that 2005 team in that specific case, USC. Pete Carroll, they had one of those pinball offenses that year, the year they lost it going for the three-peat against Texas. But they also had enough depth on defense where they could slow the other team down. So a bad defensive game was, hey, we gave up 28 points.
Right.
But they didn't have. It's hard to have that kind of depth anymore at any program, let alone when you're rebuilding one. And if you're going to go out there and start going up and down the field, well, so is the other team.
Yeah, no. Like I said, it turns into a shootout.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a game of luck and not necessarily skill or power or whatever. You know what I mean? So I'm interested in seeing the changes that are made there and what do they do now that they're in the Big Ten, where you are going to have to come with some defense. You can't come in there with that soft stuff in the Big Ten and think you're going to make your way through that schedule.
I mean, I do think the Pac-12 schools, if they can get a little physicality to them, like the Oregons, Washingtons, USC's, I think they may actually have a little bit of an advantage on some of the Big Ten teams, not Ohio State and Michigan. I'm talking
yeah, because they have the ability to score.
Yes.
As well. Yes, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
When you're playing Iowa, okay, and Iowa's running in place to get to 20, okay, no matter how good Iowa's defense is, if you have enough skill, you should be able.
Yeah, I want to tell you this, and I'm guessing this is going to continue. Iowa putrid offensively, but defensively, Emil, the most fundamentally sound team. And this, with me having watched Georgia and Alabama, with two guys that can write books on defense, Kirby Smart and, the now departed Nick Saban, Iowa is the picture of efficiency, discipline, and all that. And yeah, it's not easy to move the ball up and down the field and score points on.
No, I'm not picking on them. I like what they do because Iowa's not bringing in a bunch of 4 and 5 stars. They're coaching their kids up.
No, but those kids are where they're supposed to be, literally on every snap. So, yeah, I do want to see USC and Oregon against those teams. And so what does win out? Our West Coast offensive swing or what?
Not to get off subject, but since we're on college football, that's what I think fans don't realize generally, the difference why certain plays will work in college and not the NFL. 2 things, right? NFL players are professionals, so they tend not to get out of position as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are out of position, sometimes they can outrun their mistakes.
Sure.
Because they're superior athletes. College kids get out of position, and there's not most times you're not playing a bunch of future NFL players.
Right.
You can get around corners in college. You don't do that often in the pros.
Oh, no. And anyone who's made that move from college to NFL has definitely found that out quick, fast, and in a hurry. Finally, Emil, I'm going to end on this week, yesterday, actually. We lost a beloved Bill Walton, who spent my entire lifetime in the game of basketball. When I came in this world, he was in basketball, and, throughout the entire time.
You're 4 years younger than me, so I was 9. So I remember his MVP season. I was old enough to understand sports. His MVP season with the Portland Trailblazers. And he was a load. Like, before he had his foot injuries, I mean, he was one of the 4 or 5 best players in the game.
Yeah, my only memory really of him is his role in the '86 Boston Celtics. Where he took a back seat, and this is a guy who had accomplished just about everything up until his NBA, and even he was I believe Rookie of the Year, was he? NBA when he came into the NBA.
Only Rookie of the Year. He was the only MVP the Portland Trailblazers ever had.
Right. So a guy who had done all that and now found himself in a lesser role, more of a supporting role with the Boston Celtics, and played it the way that you need to. Did his role, did his thing, and really helped out that team. That's my memory of him.
I'll hit you with something on Bill Walton for some of our younger listeners. So you go out and use Google here. You use Wikipedia. The UCLA Bruins in the 70s had a record 88-game winning streak. And no, I'm not stuttering, and that's not a typo, because younger people won't believe that. They won 88 games in a row. In that streak, 73 of those were when Bill Walton was there.
I'd heard that Bill Walton did not lose a basketball game from the middle of his junior year in high school until the middle of his junior year in college.
Yeah.
Did not lose a basketball game. We're not talking football. We're not talking about, this is some powerhouse team in Kentucky that just had all of the players. and then you went to a smaller college that was just done. You went to a Mount Union or something like that, a Georgia Southern back. It was not that. That was you played big time high school basketball. Then you went to UCLA. Now, granted, it's UCLA was the creme de la creme, but you're still playing the best of the best in college basketball. And on any given Saturday or any day during the week, you should be able to lose a basketball game. He didn't do that for 4 years.
Don Wooden's Bruins of that 60-70 era won 10 of 12 championships from the season that ended, in 1964 through 75. So 12 seasons. They won 10 of 12. The only ones they lost, 1966, famous Texas El Paso, whatever they were called at the time. The all-black team played the all-white Kentucky team, beat them. And 74 was Walton. He lost in the Final Four to David Thompson in North Carolina State.
Yeah, so my question is this, since we're a football show.
Sure.
If we're thinking strictly about his NBA career, who is Bill Walton in NFL terms? So that's a tough one. It's probably going to, you're going to have to run through your, would you say you were 54-year Rolodex? Who is that guy in the NFL? Past or present? You probably know.
It's going to be somebody who was great, made the Hall of Fame, but could have been even better, without breaking down. Maybe a guy you played with, like a Terrell Davis, who had a shooting star that went straight up, lasted for a short period of time because injuries came along and took him back down. We still ended up in the Hall of Fame as one of the all-time greats. So you remember him, but he burned bright when he was bright, but went out quickly. So I think that's the only reason he comes to mind, because he had that span of 3 to 4 years where he was very, very dominant, but he wasn't Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders or,
not quite the entire body of work, of course, because, a lot of the Hall of Fame too, for all of these sports, is longevity. So you got to give kudos to Terrell Davis for having made it because of, in such a short space of time.
And I'm not criticizing him. I'm saying injuries, no different. I mean, you're a baseball guy. People always say to me, who's better? You can make the argument either way if you want to play lawyer. Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle. And I say, well, it depends what you're looking for. I always say, if you tell me at their apex, their 4 or 5 best years, it'll be close, but I'll take Mantle. The difference is Mantle burned very bright, had knee injuries, and while he played a long time and had some phenomenal numbers, he wasn't Willie Mays. Willie Mays played for 20 years and for a long, long time was one of the best in the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's kind of what I feel of Bill Walton as an NBA player. When he was good, man, he took the Portland Trailblazers and beat, at the time, I was a Dr. J fan. And he beat Dr. J.
Yeah, there was literally no reason to expect anything from the Portland Trailblazers until he arrived. That was, stats. You padded your stats against the Portland Trailblazers until he arrived. So, I'm
sorry to see him go, because I always got a kick. I didn't know he was sick. I did some research. I sent you, and we have a group chat. He had multiple myeloma, which is a blood disease. I guess he had it for 12 years. And I didn't even know he was that sick, because he had done games this past offseason. I loved, as a Pac-12 fan, listening to him, the Conference of Champions. That's all he'd say for the whole broadcast.
Yeah, and he had a very unique and booming voice. Yeah. And to be honest, my memories of him are more as a broadcaster, obviously, than as a player, because I didn't really see much of it. So that's going to do it for us here, though. A really short Two Chumps football podcast. We'd like to thank you guys for joining us. No show next week. Emil and I do return the following week, and who knows what will be on the plate then. Who gets
I hate to say it.
NIL deal breaks down. Who knows?
I hate to say it, because, we're not there yet, but, we're getting pretty – training camp sneaks up on you really quickly. You'll be surprised.
See how fast that stuff happens? But anyway, football's right around the corner. That's crazy that I just said that, but yeah,
it's around the corner. It never ends.
It never does end. There was a schedule reveal. There was a draft. There was free agency, there was draft, there was a schedule reveal. Now we're going to be jumping into training camps before you know it, and they'll be glossing up all these rookie quarterbacks that are about to head on their way to Canton, because that's how it's going to sound through August. Come September, though, when a guy's 7 of 16 with 2 interceptions.
I wish I had my ball cap here so I can go, we like our team. That's what all the coaches say. What do you think, Coach Calomino? I like our team.
I remember all the Bryce Young hype last year at about this time. Not as much CJ Stroud hype where they missed on that one. But anyway, we'll see who they miss on this year. But that's it. We're out of here. For Emil Calomino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. Hit that subscribe button, guys, on your way out, whether you're on YouTube or you're on one of these streaming devices. We greatly appreciate it. See you guys next time. We're out.